Hello friends and welcome to episode 198 of the Noclip Crewcast. We are coming at you from the far and distant past. We're recording this one ahead of time as we are going to be on location, at least myself and Frank are, next week. Jeremy's got a week off, so it was either going to be this or just Jesse talking to you for an hour, which I mean, that would have been all right. What would you have talked about, Jesse?
Oh man, I would have talked about all of the fun Japanese obscure games that I played when I was 12 years old. All the bad Wii games. I would have talked about Ninja Bread Man. Everyone knows Ninja Bread Man. That's a real video game. I've never heard of.
Is this a Canadian only game?
I don't think so. It was like one of those dollar bin games that was just horrendous on the Wii. It's like notably terrible.
Ninja Bread, like gingerbread. Okay, that's a stretch, but
right? Like
it sure
similar
is.
sounds, I guess.
Wow, Ninja Bread Man.
So you've all been saved.
Yeah.
We don't have to listen to that.
Now I kind of want to know about Ninja Bread Man, if I'm being completely honest.
Eurogamer gave it a 1 out of 10, so you know it's worth checking out.
Oh yeah,
they got a point. That's pretty good.
That's true. It didn't get a 0.
I wonder what you needed to get a 0. Like, could you?
Right.
I remember there was a. Yeah, go on, Frank.
I was gonna say it has to cause like physical harm, like a ring tape. Like you have to die playing it. I don't know.
Wow, that's a -1 maybe at that stage. There was a magazine. There was an Amiga game. It was like a football game. It was like Paul Gascoigne soccer. No, it was Leeds United had their own football game in like 1992 on the Amiga, and one of the magazines I read gave it NA%. Because the entire review was them trying to get the game running on a bunch of it was in PC Gamer. They were trying to get it running on a bunch of PCs, and it was just troubleshooting. The whole review was just like, we couldn't get this to work, and this is what we tried and on all the machines, and then they gave it NA because they couldn't play it. So
not even a 0 though.
Not even a 0.
Didn't get the. I mean, I guess it could have been a great game.
It could probably was.
They'll never know.
That's the thing about games that don't install. We're here to talk about. Not games from the past, but games. Actually, no, we're talking about games from the past. That's what we're doing. These games have come out, but they are games that perhaps in the future we will say that was a game of that year. The year is 2024. We are almost done with the year, and in about a month's time we're going to be doing our Game of the Year podcast, which if you're new to the podcast are pretty lengthy. We usually spend like 3-4 episodes doing the whole shebang, picking our games of the year and then giving them their own unique bespoke awards, which is the Noclip signature way. But we have decided to take a bit of time today to sort of throw up the bat signal and give you guys an excuse to go play some of these games if you haven't yet. Like, there's a lot of games came out this year, a lot of smaller games, a lot of obscure games along with the big ones, and there's not that much time left to play them before we get into Game of the Year and start maybe spoiling some of them. So that is essentially what this podcast is all about. Frank, this was your concoction, right?
Yeah, so we need something to fill the gap as we were out, and in the years past we would do like during the summer we would do like a almost like a doctor's checkup, like a mid game of the year check-in of just like, all right, what's all this stuff coming out in the first 6 months? What do we like? Just to kind of repopulate our head with all the stuff, and then also tease future games coming out. So this is kind of like our in advance like check-in. Also kind of give us a breakdown of what we need to play by the end of the year, and just kind of check in before we start the actual delegating and figuring it out. So yeah, that's, it's just celebrating games. Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest of 2019 still going strong. So very, very happy to celebrate it. It's like passing the torch.
Yeah, let's jump into it in a second. But first of all, massive thanks to all of our incredible Battle Pass holders: Eamon Slattery, Harry Flanagan, Battle Royale Games, Arno, Richard Matheson, James Brown, Mark Rojas, Ryan Cobb, Tucker Morgan, David McGarry, Sven Huster, Pez, Uint Nate, Tim Robinson, Forrest Brewitt, Jonathan Kremen, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Hammerlade, Zachary Snader, Alex Sharp, Alex Goucher, George Dakotas, Jacob Godserve, Tohir Teliev, and of course, Ryson. Thank you for your incredible support over here at Noclip. We're working our asses off. excited to let people know what we're working on this week. To be honest, it's going to be, I think, all of what Jeremy's working on too. We've a lot of unannounced shenanigans to get into. But first of all, let's talk about some of these games. So each of us has put down somewhere in the realm of like 6 to 10 games, maybe. There's a decent amount of crossover here, so it's not like we have to get through 60 games. But we do have to get through a lot of games, so we're not going to spend an overly long amount of time talking about the merits of each of these and cannibalize future episodes of the podcast. But in the spirit of covering something that a lot of people have on their lists, I haven't yet because I feel like I haven't played this game enough. But who wants to pick up the baton and talk about one of the 50 games that are on this particular UFO?
I'll do that, I guess. Yeah, I mean, we've been outspoken fans of Derek Yu and his work in the past, and his dedication to not only like he has like a very pure sort of like old school games appreciation, but also, you know, if you've seen the Rediscovering Mystery doc we did years ago, he also has this appreciation for like the mystique that surrounded games in those days, and like, you know, the schoolyard talking to your friends and being like, yeah, my uncle works at Nintendo, and if you like hit the, you know, back 600 times as Sub-Zero, you unlock like whatever.
Naked Sub-Zero.
Yeah, exactly. So UFO 50 feels like a true like evolution of that. It's not only a game that is chock full of secrets, but a game that is chock full of games. UFO 50 is, for people who don't know, a collection of 50 individual full-fledged, you know, NES-ish era games, late 80s style games, or I guess throughout the 80s kind of. And the default sorting for the main menu screen of them is chronologically. So it's kind of like playing through the entire catalog of a development studio over the course of, you know, a decade or so. I can't remember the exact years, but it's a really special experience. It's funny because the thing that got me excited about UFO 50 was when it came out, I found a few games that I absolutely loved and got super into and just like immediately had to beat. And I kind of had this feeling or like this concern that I was going to go online and everyone would be like, the 3 games that I loved would be the 3 games everyone was talking about.
Right.
And then I went on and everyone was like, oh my God, Avianos is like the best game ever. It's the best game of the whole collection. And it was a game I hadn't even touched yet. And I feel like as many people as I've seen ranting about UFO 50, I feel like every single one of them has an answer that is totally unexpected to me. So it's not only a collection of games, it's a collection of like, you know, sort of like equally amazing games that all appeal to different sensibilities. And just that level of depth, that 50 games that you can get into with the depth of an individual one game that you get excited about is just insane.
Is it cheating? Is having 50 of them cheating, Jesse?
That's what I wanted to mention. We don't have to make a hard stance on it here, but we should probably consider what the rule is for UFO 50, because I feel like there's like 1 or 2 games in there that are hot. Like, Jeremy, you don't have a ton of games that you connected with this year, I don't think, right? This hasn't felt like a real banger year for you, but I bet there's like 3 or 4 in UFO 50 that you could totally put up.
Here, I got the list up here. Let me shout out a couple here. Overbold is unbelievable, sort of a top-down arcade shooter, like a Robotron, I guess, but with gambling. You gamble for points, and it's a roguelike, and you use the points for upgrades. Very fucking addictive. Incredibly short game as well, but very difficult. So it's just like this fucking, you blast it, you die in like 30 seconds, and then, you know, you put it all on black and roll the dice. Pilot Quest is like the first idle game I've ever liked in my life, maybe. It's just incredibly Moorish, and it runs in the background while you play other games, which is evil genius, I would describe that as. Golfaria, I feel like I need to play more of. It's like a Link to the Past, but golfing, which
it's a shame they didn't call it Links to the Past.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's brilliant.
Right there.
Call Derek you right now. I mean, I liked so many. Bushido Ball, brilliant, yes. Obviously. I think it's called Hot Foot, is kind of like a dodgeball thing. There's just like Mortal 1 and 2 are both unbelievable. Nightmare, a full horror point and click adventure. So yeah, I mean, I would say like half of these games I really, really loved, and then the other half are ones that maybe I haven't given enough time to, or just aren't suited to me.
So I mean, somebody's going to do it. Probably multiple people are going to do it. But is the way around this that we do like a game, a UFO 50 game of the year. And maybe not rank all of them because that might seem a bit mean to the back end of it, but like maybe do a top 10 or something like that. Or I don't know, you know. I mean, people have done that as well, I'm sure, but we could
we could do that as like a bonus episode or something, or do it publicly, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think that'd be really, really fun. And I think it's like, when else will we ever have the opportunity to do that?
Yeah.
To do like a, you know what I mean? Like to do an internal Russian nesting doll of goaties.
I think he was working on this and had announced it back when we did the Spelunky. No, because Spelunky 2 came out. So, no, I think he did.
Yeah, I mean, they've been working on this game for 8 years, I believe.
Okay, yeah, so definitely then. It's older than Noclip, so yeah, fair. Yeah, probably. So yeah, it's going to be a while till we get the next chance to do this. Frank, any thoughts on UFO 50 before we bounce along?
I mean, just as like the achievement itself, the fact that this came out, the fact that it works, the fact that all these games are so deep and incredible and just like genuinely charming, and that each game you play just reignites like, you know, all the genre tropes of that thing. Like there's so many games in here that remind me of like early Neo Geo games and all these, you know, things I played on my Game Boy. That's just like, it kind of rekindles that early love of video games. And like, yeah, again, part of it is like, I just want to have the time to be able to dive into all these. Again, it is the perfect game for Steam Decks, for airplanes. It won't drain your battery. The music, the composer, the same composer as Spelunky, put up the soundtrack on Bandcamp, and it's like 350 songs. He was even tweeting like, yeah, Bandcamp's UI like kind of breaks after 300, but I kept uploading anyways. Yeah, Pilot Quest for me is so charming. I still have to beat it, but I like left it idle enough to where I have all the upgrades. So now I just gotta go out and you know, basically beat the game. But yeah, it's very remarkable. It's very charming. Party House to me is like, as someone who loves like 80s trauma movies, I love that it has just all that 80s, like those cheesy tropes in it. Yeah, it just makes me smile. It is like this Charlie Kaufman insane thought experiment, but they did it and they committed, and it's such an achievement. And so yeah, yeah, it's great.
It is a Charlie Kaufman game. This is like the Synecdoche, New York of video games or something. It's like you love video games so much that you built a world of video games in which video games exist or something. Yeah, I never would have thought of that comparison, but that's brilliant.
We previously have talked about people pronouncing words wrong that they'd seen written down for years. Not being from America, I did not know that place was called Synecdoche until I moved here, and I used to call it Synedouche, New York.
Oh, that's Schenectady.
Okay,
Synecdoche.
Sorry.
I mean that is the play on words that they're doing in the title. Yeah,
that shows you how ignorant I am. Is that I've also forgotten that is the case. So yes.
That's all right. They sound almost the same when you say them because they're both a million syllables.
Let's jump on one that I've only done, let's say, just for fun. I was a little bit surprised it didn't pop up on anyone else's one. INDIKA. This was everyone's, probably best nun game of the year, I'm assuming. Just an absolutely fucking bizarre horror movie. Like independent horror movie Unreal Engine tech demo. I absolutely loved this weird thing. It didn't overstay its welcome. It's fairly basic in many ways, but it's just so out there and strange. And I really like how it resolved. I really like anything. It happened last year with Blasphemous, right? Like anything that like tickles my sort of Catholic pancreas or whatever it is gets me interested, and I loved her. I thought like I loved the idea of wrestling with your faith and then the morality of what was going on, and I loved that it was her story, but it was taking place clearly in this world where this war was going on that was much bigger than her, and then stuff just got so like I don't know, like otherworldly or disconnected from reality, and then I just thought the ending was super cool. I absolutely loved it. Any other lovers of INDIKA in here? Likers of INDIKA?
I liked INDIKA a lot. I should probably add it to my honorable mention. It sits with the only one on my honorable mention list right now is Crow Country. And I think Crow Country is another game for me that I really, really enjoyed. I would recommend to everyone. But it didn't quite it's like right up against the GOTY line is here and it's bumping up against it or something. You know what I mean? I feel like if I had the Catholic upbringing background, that would have elevated it just a little bit slightly and it would have been in GOTY territory.
Yeah, I grew up with a lot of nuns around. Like, you know, my sister's teachers in the school, my friends' teachers, a lot of them were nuns. I had a grand aunt who was a nun who used to spend time with us all the time. I like nuns, and also nuns can be the worst fuckers in the world. Like, I know nuns who are the sweetest, most charitable people and who are the biggest cunts in the world. Like, they both, the nun spectrum is so beautifully broad. And in the first 10 minutes of that game, you meet them all. Like, there's such sons of bitches in that. You're doing that water puzzle back and forth. Yeah, I loved it. It was such a weird little game. And the art direction on it was great as well. Yeah, very, very cool. A game that I do have on my list that a lot of people also have on their list and is a relatively new one is Mouthwashing. Who wants to take this one up?
Oh my God. Mouthwashing is just like such a... It's one of those games where I feel like I haven't played anything that's reached that level of like confidence this year in its storytelling and its visual direction, and in the themes that it handles. We didn't talk about it when we were being a little bit more brief, and I'm not going to talk about it until we get to the episode for GOTY, but I feel like Mouthwashing is touching on a lot of touching on a lot of things narratively, societally, in a workplace environment that I've very rarely seen any media touch on and represent in a way that Mouthwashing does. It's not just a game about, you know, crazy fucked up things happening on a spaceship, or about, you know, the struggles of being a worker who's exploited. It's also about a lot of other things, again, that I'll save until we get there, because it's a bit of a spoiler for the story. But I just think overall, for such a tight, small package of a game that is priced perfectly, feels like the kind of thing that people are looking for when they want to play really artistic indie games. I think Mouthwashing is like the peak of that for me this year. It's so beautifully delivered, and it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it hits every note that it's trying to in perfect sequence, to me anyway. There's a couple little hiccups throughout the experience, but they're so brief and so inconsequential that I feel like they don't get in the way of the point they're trying to make, and they make it perfectly in my eyes.
Yeah, there's two moments where it tries to be a bit more of a video game, and it's the two most uninteresting parts of it. That's the one thing I'll say about Mouthwashing, is I think the economy of storytelling in it is super sharp. It neither feels like a walking simulator that you are just like, that you could have easily just like put on play and watched the whole thing. Like, it does feel like you're, I don't know why, maybe it's the immersion of it, or maybe it's the story that you're like so connected to, or maybe it's the fact that you're inhabiting different people, so you're constantly having to shift your own perspective. But I never felt like, oh, this is just some like boring ass walking simulator. Why couldn't you have like done this as a video? It would have been the same. But also, it is super linear, and those discrete chapters are all quite short. I don't know how they managed to do that balance, but I almost did. I think I might have played this in, if not 2 settings, maybe 1, just because I couldn't put the thing down. I think it was 2 days. I think it was 2 settings. Yeah, and it's like 13 quid. You're like, yeah, this is one of the best games I played this year, and it costs less than a fucking Subway sandwich, you know? Sure.
Yeah, the economy of storytelling, and just like the quality of storytelling in general, and some of the writing, like, yeah, we'll get into it on future episodes, but there's like, there are a couple parts where I was like, Jesus Christ, this is doing writing that is better than most, you know, new contemporary movies I've seen this year, which is insane. It just, when games have really good writing, it feels like it elevates it so much. And it's like, you know, sometimes I enjoy games that just have passable writing and I don't even notice it, but when it goes above and beyond, I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking art. It also just has this like, you know, the concept of like a bottle episode in TV where they're like, oh no, we're trapped in this room and we can't leave this room for the whole episode, and then all of the story has to take place within that room.
Yeah.
This reminds me of Jean-Paul Sartre's play No Exit, which is like, it's a bunch of people who are trapped in a room together and they slowly realize that they're in hell, and hell is other people.
That's cool.
And Mouthwashing reminded me of No Exit. It's like it's a contained environment, very limited cast of characters, and it just it finds a way to, instead of having you go on this grand RPG adventure where you like meet the townsfolk in this town and they're kind of like, you know, an inch deep or whatever, but the world is a million miles wide. This feels like it's like a pond that's as deep as the ocean. It just feels like it keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. And as it turns the story, tightens the knob, you get dimensions of these characters that you might not have expected at the beginning, and they sort of transform. So yeah, I just feel like it gets an insane amount of narrative and sort of like dramatic mileage out of such a small pool of characters in such a small environment.
A similar game aesthetically, but very different in terms of how it plays, is Arctic Eggs, and that is a game that appears on at least 2 of our lists here. Jeremy put me onto this. I think maybe you guys did a crew video or something happened, or you guys were talking about in the Discord something, and I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, just the name itself, and then you see the super or the capsule image on Steam, and it's like a frying pan, and I'm like, what the fuck is this stupid shit? And yeah, it's like a physics puzzle game. It's a game where you flip eggs for people, and like it almost feels like a Wii game, you know?
Yes.
Like this is such a
100%.
like
Totally.
such a odd like premise to build an entire experience around, but they do like it again. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not a super expensive game, but just like Arctic Eggs, it never feels old either. Like they just keep adding in weird stuff like cockroaches, or I mean that's the most normal weird thing you flip in this game. It takes that idea and just squeezes the rock as much as possible and drains every little drop of blood knowledge out of it, and puts it into it. I thought it was very funny and weird and esoteric, and I love the weird world it was based in. It was just such an awful place, but all the people were so disenfranchised and disaffected, and just the lore of loving and this why you were doing it as well. Like there was this weird quest you were on. It's just everything about it was just fucking great. It was such a silly game.
I kept thinking when I was playing Arctic Eggs, it's like mechanically it's brilliant that it's just this one core activity, and you're just going around doing this one sort of like, you know, almost like mini game with all of these different people and just sort of like mixing up the elements in the frying pan. But the storytelling and world building reminded me of, you know, that line at the end of, this is not a spoiler, it's just a famous line. You know, that's the line at the end of Blade Runner where he's like, I've seen like things you people can't imagine. I've seen like gunchips over the shoulder of a riot, like things like that. I feel like there's like 3 lines there where he alludes to a bunch of things that the audience is not privy to, but just the suggestion of them as like throwaway lines, you're like, holy shit, this guy has seen unimaginable things. It does so much, like there's so much storytelling heft to just like mentioning specific things that you are not aware of and letting you imagine them. And I feel like Arctic Eggs is kind of like, yeah, it's like a little pocket world, and you can only sort of imagine the world outside of this one environment, basically, for the most part. But you get little glimpses of what type of world this is, the sort of dystopia it is. That's something I always like in dystopic literature is like, you know, you read 1984 and you're like, what is this world like? And then slowly you get bled details throughout, or Fahrenheit 451, you slowly learn about like the rules around book banning and stuff. And I feel like Arctic Eggs is, it fits weirdly, like comically into that world for how small it is.
But it's all about what you're eating, or like, you know, or how much you revere food. Like, yeah,
it's like a silly version of that, but just the little light touches of narrative, and just like you could do it in a very silly way, but there are pockets of sincerity in Arctic Eggs where it's like it tugs at your heartstrings in unexpected ways and at unexpected times.
Man, oh man. Let's jump to Frank, one of yours. I feel like Frank has the more sort of what's the word? Traditional is definitely not the word. But you have more contemporary. No. That's it, or console. You could even go. Your games are a bit. It's a bit of a normie list, which honestly. Saying that in regards to Frank's tastes seems a little bit outside of reality too. You've got a bunch of big AAA stuff on your plate here. Pick one yourself.
Well, I was going to say the specific, it's all AAA Japanese games.
There you go. That is
Yeah,
true.
exactly.
I mean,
the
the one that's probably going to be my game of the year is Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Yeah, the Yakuza team's been unstoppable at just evolving their series. And like back in 2020, my favorite game of that year and the game I burned through so much of quarantine with was the original Like a Dragon, the like Yakuza 7 or Yakuza 8, where they finally made it JRPG. This one now takes place in Hawaii, but now the extra sauce of like it being in America, and it's like the first bilingual game where half the characters speak Japanese, half speak English. A lot of the characters will code switch and speak in Japanese and English, and like the way that is dubbed and subbed is like so organic. It's like, it's funny enough, like a lot of fighting games do that, like Tekken or Street Fighter. If Guy will speak English, Ryu will speak Japanese, or you can set everything to Japanese. But it's just so pleasant, and I love. It's the reason why I like Shenmue or the Yakuza games or Deadly Premonition, or like Jeremy's case, Earthbound. Anytime you see Americana filtered through like Japan art, it's the funniest and most charming thing ever. Because you have like giant obese dudes walking around being like, I could use a cheeseburger. And it's like, are like these poor innocent Japanese people just getting ripped off by scammers. And it's like, welcome to America. It's like, it's so good, but like it's so fun. It is like probably like one of the funniest RPGs since Earthbound. It is just such a funny game. And like, again, all my games this year are mostly JRPGs. These are games I haven't beaten because there's dozens and dozens of hours. And like, because of our nature, we're always playing different games. And it's hard to like focus, but like Infinite Wealth, I keep dripping throughout the year. And like, man, it's spectacular. And again, even with all these Yakuza games, there's mini games. Infinite Wealth, I remember at one point, like during the summer, I dipped back into it and spent like weeks just playing the Animal Crossing mode.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I haven't even done this, but you unlock the feature to visit other people's islands. So it's like, oh my God, you could do that. It's so massive. And then later, like a few months later, I dipped in and went through all the Sujimon, the Pokemon mode. And it's just, it's
so
like,
stupid.
It's right.
Just
and
collecting these humans and having them fight each other. It's like the game justifies it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a whole feature. You can level up. You can evolve Sujimon at your Animal Crossing village. You get an island where you can have them train at the gym for you or like farm minerals. And like, it's just such a massive game that I still haven't beaten, but like, yeah, it definitely lives up to its name. And like, yeah, there's still like an endless dungeon mode you can grind and things like that. There's just it's so big. And again, what happened, I got to a point with it where, like a big character from the Yakuza series shows up and it's like, wait, I don't know this person's backstory. Let me go back, finish Yakuza 3, Yakuza 4. It got me to like play the other Yakuza so I could fully appreciate it. And now that I'm back in Infinite Wealth, it's like, oh my, like, it's just such a massive game. So yeah, it has the Sega charm, the Yakuza charm, the spice of Americana. Like it's truly perfect. And then also like the extra curricular thing on my end is like going to that Anime Expo event where I got to see the voice actor, I got to see the director, Peach Milky, who was in the game also. Like
that dating stuff is also so funny. Like the online, like he's so sincere. Like his like chats are hilarious, and then like the videos you unlock and the people. Like I think one time it was a chicken or something.
Yeah.
Like I dated a chicken. It was a chicken on the other side the whole time. Who knew? Got to spend money and like get good at that whole thing. It's ridiculous. I'd forgotten about Infinite Wealth. I've stuck it on my list as well. I'm gonna have to play some more before we wrap it up. What other RPGs you're playing? You've got obviously Metaphors. You probably have to play through some more of that.
Yeah,
and then
Yeah, I feel like Persona 3 and Metaphor I can talk both because like one shows the evolution of where we're at now with Atlas. So Persona 3 Reloaded, I never played the original, and what I like about this is they took Persona 3, put it in like Persona 5's engine, so it is now like fully realized. Whereas Persona 3 originally was like more chibi like PS2 graphics, which is still nice, but yeah, Persona 3 Reloaded is amazing. But my criticism, this is both a benefit and a criticism. The thing that's awesome about Persona 3 Reloaded is it's very linear, where like the dungeon is the same thing throughout the entire game. The bosses are different and the enemies evolve, but you're going through the same like dungeon throughout this whole thing. So it kind of gets repetitive and dull. The story stuff is still charming, but after a while, it kind of becomes the same flavor. But that flavor for me, oh my, all of it, I love. Now playing Metaphor ReFantasio, and I spent more time with it last night. It's like, there's so many systems. There's like, I got deeper with the job stuff. I started to do some of the social link stuff, and what I like, it's doing the Persona 5 thing where each dungeon is now its own thing to explore, and so I'm excited to see like the different varieties. There's also a world map you can explore more. In the prologue, there was even open areas you can go into. And like, yeah, I want to spend the next 2 months just playing this game. And I think, like, while I'm on this, to say Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I started it, but it never hooked its teeth into me. And I think it's so funny where we talked about this on our last week's podcast, but Metaphor ReFantazio is doing Final Fantasy better now than, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is still really, really good. But it's that traditional JRPG, traditional job system. And I think, like, I really love Persona 3 Reloaded, but it's not technically a full new game. It's a re-envision or remaster, but it's still one of my favorites. But Metaphor ReFantazio is like Atlas full swinging, and it's like, okay, holy crap, here is their juggernaut, and I definitely want to keep playing. And I think it is a deeper experience than Persona 3, but I still like Persona 3. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I gotta play that demo at the very least and get my
Metaphor.
feet wet with that one.
Yeah, that is not your genre, like, at all. Eh?
No.
Yeah.
No, and I try I kind of try with everything, but sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. Silent Hill 2 has been sticking. It's terrifying as fuck. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I'm still in the horn hasn't gone off yet. I'm like freaking out. I'm playing this game like an absolute noob, and I'm like trying to kill these freaks with their armless little bag people or whatever the fuck they are. They're freaking me out. Sorry, apologies to anyone out there who has no arms. I'm sure you're not a bag person like these. Why did I get sick? Where did I have a slit in their mouth? Is there a slit there? You getting sick on you? No, nobody knows.
You're gonna have to play and find out.
Yeah.
It truly is like
freaking me out.
The way it reveals stuff is beautiful. I want you to keep playing. It's very good.
All right, I'll keep going. Jesse, you're the only one who has this game down, and you were very hot on it when it first came out. I'm interested to hear why you still have that love for Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
Oh, baby. This game is fucking fantastic. I look, I should be, in theory, burnt out on Metroidvanias. It is the most exhausting genre. It feels like it feels like if you scroll through indie games, it's like 40% Metroidvania, 40% Survivors game. So I should be exhausted by the genre, but it's just like the same thing you would expect done on a level that I feel like no one else is doing. In terms of animation, in terms of art style, in terms of performance, it runs great on the Switch, which, like, for how it looks, it probably shouldn't. That was the target platform, so that probably helps. And then just like gameplay wise, it has some of the hardest and most enjoyable platforming challenges of this year. Anyone who thinks that they did a hard platforming challenge playing Astro Bot needs to level up and try playing a 2D game. It turns out they're harder. They put out a DLC recently, which like showed again, hey, the team at Ubisoft Montpellier are so good at what they do. They did the Rayman Legends series, which are some of the best 2D platformers of all time. And then they've done this now, which just, I think, solidifies them as like the kings of that, or whatever, the emperors of that sort of genre or style of game. The world, like the story, it's Prince of Persia, but it's not stepping on the toes of the original games. It's not getting in the way of them. It's like telling its own story. It's introducing its own lore and mythos and stuff, which is cool. And I really appreciate playing those characters in that world. It goes a little bit anime, which also I really enjoy too. Like the bosses are a little over the top. The cutscenes are a little silly. And like you have these special attacks that you can use in the middle of combat that charge up over time. And when you use them, it's like a whole cutscene, like stops like one of them's like a Kamehameha.
Is the combat, I'm watching a trailer here, and it looks like the combat, at least with the boss fights, looks fairly involved, but what's it like with the sort of regular mobs?
Yeah, that's a big part of what makes it work too, is like the combat from moment to moment when you're just moving between areas and the boss fights utilize the same tools that you use for platforming puzzles. Like there's a lot of stuff you unlock, like a dash or, your traditional Metroidvania mechanics, but they're all used in a way that feels a lot more just like straightforward and like clean, but they're also implemented in a way where you can see the trickiness as the puzzles go on. And then in combat, you can use those same puzzle tools in your fights. So there's like not a bow, but your bow, it's the same button, but you get this like spinning disc thing you can use, and you can use that in combat to juggle your enemies, or you can knock them into the air and like use that as part of your fighting. So there's like everything you learn for puzzle solving works in combat.
Oh, that's cool. That is cool. Okay. Yeah, I got to give this a go. This seems
give it a shot. I think you'll know
it's 40
pretty
bucks
quickly
though as well.
If you don't like it. Yeah.
Does it feel worth it?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, Blasphemous 2 is what, 25, 30 or something like that?
Yeah,
It's a little
this is
pricier.
40.
Was it? That's
That's a bigger number.
That's
More,
true.
it's a
40
higher
is a bigger
number.
number. It's true.
How
I
many
think it's worth
Arctic
it.
eggs I can buy for?
That's a good point. It has a ton of content. I think it's again, it's like you could feel the polish basically the whole way through. There were some bugs near the beginning. It's a Ubisoft game, but it has
No
ironed them out.
faces.
It feels a lot better. I don't know. I feel like it's just doing everything I want it to do at a level that exceeds everyone else. And it's also one of the only Metroidvanias I'm aware of that has the most useful tool for exploring the map, which is you can take a screenshot of wherever you are and pin it on the map, which is great.
Oh,
because for
that's
Metroidvanias,
very
when you
cool.
can't remember what the hell you were doing at a marker you put
Yeah.
10 hours ago, you got to go back.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, oh, I still don't have the item for that. I'll come back 10 hours later.
Hey, you know what? You just gave me the perfect transition. It's on 1, 2, 3 of our lists. Let's talk about Animal
Oh,
Well.
there we go.
Yes.
Animal Well's great. Love Animal Well. It was my game of the Summer Games Fest stuff we did last year when I went down to LA in the summertime. I think it was last year. Yeah, super, super great game. And obviously, Big Mode ended up publishing it. It got out there probably to a bigger audience as a result and seems to have done really well.
Can I just say while you're mentioning Big Mode, did anyone watch the Xbox partner thing yesterday? Probably not. Eh?
No.
So
Why? What happened?
Animal Well's on Xbox now. I guess it launched yesterday.
Okay.
And the trailer for it is just Donkey being like, there are many shadows in a video game, but when you explore the shadows, all you find are more shadows. And the shadows of those shadows reveal another shadow. And it's just that
And
for
he's-
like a minute and 30 seconds.
But he's taking the piss, like
Yeah,
self-aware.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh my goodness, my goodness.
Anyway.
Yeah, made by Billy Basso, who programmed, designed, did the art, did the music, did the whole shebang. As far as I know, super humble guy. Came out of, I think he was at NetherRealm prior to doing this one. Yeah, Animal Well. What do you like? What do you guys like about Animal Well? It's great.
I love Animal Well. This is a strong contender for the top spot of GOTY. It's like it's weird how much it feels like it is an old game. It's doing what I like about old games, but it feels so new and so fresh and so contemporary and just like playful, I think is the thing that I like the most about it. It feels like it's doing things that are like, it's very toy-like. Like one of the first tools you get is a frisbee, which is, it's a weapon, it's a traversal tool, and we'll talk later in more spoiler terms, but every tool has kind of like unexpected ramifications and applications, and when you discover them are just these little joyful, playful moments where you're like, what, that can happen? Like, that's crazy. And it just constantly feels like it's just inspired, I guess is the word. It feels like every element of this game was probably, the moment it was discovered in the development was probably like a very sort of like inspired, fun moment. In fact, I including the sound design, which is so like bizarre and playful and bouncy. I highly recommend everyone who's played Animal Well go watch a video that Emily Hopkins put out. She plays like video game harp covers on YouTube, but she did a video called "I Visited the Animal Well Development Studio," where
cool.
she went to visit Billy Basso at his home studio, and they talk about music and sound design. And the way he talks about the sound design of Animal Well, I feel like is indicative of how the game feels like it's game design, where he's just like, yeah, I just thought it'd be like a weird bouncy noise, so I just like got my microphone and went like boop whoop, and then just like it's just so fucking.
The
I don't
bit
know.
in that
There's
video
just-
about how he made the sounds for the whale, hilarious.
Yeah. It's great. It's just there's just a sort of like casual, silly brilliance to his like game design and sound design mind that I think reverberates throughout this whole game. And also, it's just like an incredibly dense world of puzzles that is constantly recontextualizing things and reusing things in new ways and causing you to see things in new ways that it just like turned my brain inside out.
Excellent.
Yeah, it is one of those games that just feels like, I don't know, the knowledge that you discover over time. It's like that Outer Wilds feeling of constantly walking past something that you couldn't possibly comprehend, and then suddenly a light switch flips in your brain, and you're like, "Oh shit, that's what that was!" And you're like frantically running across the map to go to the thing that was like that, and yeah, just the way the mechanics overlap and play into each other, and the way they combine at times. It's just one of those games where, I don't know, it's a feeling that not a lot of games are able to do well, of giving you both the feeling of not understanding what's going on, but the encouragement to continue to learn, to not just bounce off of it because you're confused or don't understand it, but like just enough rope to pull yourself along.
There.
Yeah, good carrot and a stick. Yeah, exactly. So
I like how it focuses less on combat and more on exploration. I think that's a big one for me, because like a lot of like the Prince of Persia one, for instance, like for whatever reason, it's even like games like Hollow Knight, like I'm always so less interested in combat than I am exploration. That and I think that's why. I mean, I don't know, because Blasphemous was basically all combat as well. So maybe I don't know what I like, but I definitely in Animal Well, I liked that it was so much about just like, learning what to do and exploring new places and finding hidden areas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let's get the big one out of the way, shall we, folks? Let's get the elephant in the room, the big elephant with the fucking clown makeup on its face. Balatro, whatever way you want to say it. It has taken over the world. You can check out our podcast episode of was Dear Dwyery, wasn't it? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, first Dear Dwyery.
Yeah, about Balatro. Go check it out. It's out on mobile now. It's out on everything. It's taken over the world. Balatro, what is there? I feel like much of this podcast is to get people to play games that they probably haven't played, so this might be a bit redundant. Is there anything to say about Balatro prior to our Game of the Year conversation?
At least for me, it finally taught me how to play poker, because I never really got it. I feel like maybe in Red Dead Redemption, I think I kind of tried, or in GT. Like, there's always games have always had mini games, and there's always achievements like win
Poker
a hand
night at the inventory. That was a good one.
Yeah, there's always like achievements like win a hand of poker, and I'll have to look at a guy like, what the hell is all? I don't understand. But there was one I took, my first plane ride to Japan this year, where it was like, I got so much time, everyone was buzzing about it, and then it melted 6 hours, and like even my friend next to me, my friend Brad, like we were both just cracked out playing Balatro on this plane, and like I remember it was landing, and we were still finishing up a round. So for that, I say thank you so much. And like, yeah, by the time I landed in Japan, I knew how to play poker, and then later when I played Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball 3, I knew how to play poker, and I got the achievements, and I could change their bikinis. It was awesome. It was great. So Balatro is great. I also love the weird video poker low fidelity graphics. Like, it's like, again, they're going for that aesthetic, the music, everything. Like, you can like smell the cigarettes. It's awesome. And like, as a kid I always went to Vegas, so it's like I went to Vegas in the 90s a lot. So there's something about like, yeah, it has that like Caesar's Palace like crust on it, which is a compliment. So it's very good.
Yeah, the aesthetic reminds me of I never saw video poker as a kid, but in Massachusetts growing up, they always had Keno machines, which is like a local like state-run gambling thing. I never interfaced with them, but I just, you would see them at like bars and like the pizza place and shit. And I don't know. It's like Frank said, there's this sort of like crusty gambling machine allure to Balatro, but the fact that it has no real money involved makes it like it's like a harmless guilty pleasure or something. I don't know. I found this game unbearably addictive, like probably the most addictive game I've played since Slay the Spire. Just was like unable to help myself around this game. I had to like hide. It's one of the only games hidden on my Steam library because I was like, I couldn't stop myself from fucking playing it. It's it's just so fun, and I don't know. It just constantly feels like you're evolving new strategies and building new approaches and unveiling new. I mean, people have unveiled new facets of this game, things that it's telegraphing to you secretly over time that no one discovered for months and months and months. So it's clearly just got like crazy depth to it for such a simple seeming game.
Good old Balatro. We'll talk about it plenty, I'm sure, in December. Jesse, you've got a bunch of games to talk about here. Why don't you take a couple and tell us why you think they're maybe. I feel like these are definitely games that people should also maybe know about because they might not be on a lot of people's Game of the Year lists.
Yeah, let me rattle off the hotties. So Another Crab's Treasure. We did a video on Crew, me and Frank on this one. Very funny, silly little game about being a crab who wants his shell back. It's just, I don't like Dark Souls games that aren't Dark Souls. I wouldn't even say I really like Dark Souls games, but I like the aesthetic of Another Crab's Treasure so much. It has this like SpongeBob SquarePants childish Saturday morning cartoon style to it, and I wasn't really sure if I loved it until I finished it. Because at a certain point, I'd say the last third of the game, it switches tone, not overly abruptly, but it does it in this way that feels really earned given all the little subtle things that happen throughout the story. And there's like just a scene, a visual that happens at the end of the game that made me go, oh, okay. No, yeah, this is going to be in my heart for a very long time. It just is just doing a lot with its ideas, and I couldn't stop playing it after I got to a certain point. So I think that's a high mark for me. I tend to fall off of things pretty quick. Again, especially if they're just doing Souls-like combat mechanics. Yeah, love it. One of the other ones, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I feel like I've talked about this one a bunch throughout the years since I played it. It is the hardest and probably best looking puzzle game of this year. Like, it's an escape room game not too far removed from the Resident Evil series. It's all about solving puzzles, but the puzzles ramp up very quickly from like straightforward, find the number on a letter and put that into the keypad, and suddenly become these like fourth wall breaking, impossible to comprehend how you would think of that as a puzzle as puzzles. Like, there are moments where there's something inside of the game that gives you information for a shape that you saw 3 hours ago. I don't have my book here, but I have a book that's got the scrawlings of a madman on it because of this game. And just like narratively, it's doing great stuff. I love the way it looks. It's got like this monochrome and then like bright pinks and purples. It's scary at times, but like not in a horror way, but in like a, oh my God, what did I just do to the world kind of way. It gets in your bones. If you like hard puzzles, it's the best, not just of this year, but of like the last handful of years. It's up there with some of the greats. And the last one I'll rattle off, Unicorn Overlord. This was very early in the year. I think when I talked about it, I very improperly explained what it was. It's basically an auto battler where you're making your squads of up to 6 units. And each of the units, it's like rock, paper, scissors, Spock, I don't know. I didn't watch Big Bang Theory. I don't know what their dumb fucking rock, paper, scissors pentagram was. But like, it's basically like that where you have like a knight who is good at beating this unit, but then this unit is really good at beating knights. And you have to make the perfect set of units with different calibrations and positionings and like different equipment. There's so many little minute changes you can make to each setup to make them feel special and unique and different and powerful. And like half the fun is figuring out how to make one turn last like 2 minutes because there's so many interactions. Like, there's passive things that can happen. Narratively, couldn't tell you what the hell's going on. I don't like the story of the game very much. It kind of sucks. It has this problem that Vanillaware tends to have where they're not really telling a story. They're just like creating scenarios to get you to the next fun thing to do. And I think they've succeeded in that regard. But if you're someone who played 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim and you're like, oh, I want that again, this is not that game. It is purely a game that is focused on optimizing information and making big, strong women with swords jump around on the screen a bunch. I absolutely adore it. I would be shocked if anyone on this team who's not me plays this game, number one, and then number two enjoys it. So
I wanted to say I was in Japan when this came out, when Jesse talked about it. Otherwise, I would have jumped on this. It's Vanillaware, the team that did Dragon's Crown, the beat 'em up with the giant muscle women. Like, I'm ready to play this.
I would love to know your thoughts on this.
Yeah,
it'd be good to get a second voice on that one as well. I always feel bad when only one of us has played a game that's like cool, because it always sounds like, oh, it's just one person who likes it, but obviously, it would be great to have someone else as well being able to jump in on that. That's kind of, this is what a lot of this is. It's like for me as well. It's like hearing you guys talk about these games and going like, yeah, I do need to play this Prince of Persia game. Like, I do need to play a bunch of these ones and get some eyeballs on them. Those were Unicorn Overlord, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and Another Crab's Treasure. Let me rattle off my sort of last one that's just for me, I think. Still Wakes the Deep. This was the first-person Scottish oil rig through John Carpenter. Like, it's a sort of a cosmic body horror, claustrophobic first-person game where you are escaping a terrifying enemy within this oil rig. Lots of interesting, like lots of great acting, lots of great characters, musings on death and family and legacy and friendship and stuff that I found really interesting. Just looks gorgeous too. Created by the Chinese Room, who will be taking over apparently, or have taken over on Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. So yeah, interested to see how that one comes out. But Still Makes the Deep is a short enough game, a lot of fun. I think it's about $35. I really liked it. If anyone else wants to play it, I think some of you guys have played it. I think, or maybe not. Or
I'm going to play it for
You're
sure.
going to play it? Cool.
Yeah, same.
It's very cool. I think it's worth a shot for some people. One that I have down here as well, and so does Frank, is the sequel to a game we know a little bit about, Hades 2. Not technically out this year, but who knows? Game of the year is a weird. Video games are weird, so I don't know if that disqualifies it or not. Who fucking cares? Frank, Hades 2, you enjoying it? And Jeremy still hasn't played it. He's trying to go in vanilla, so don't be too spoilery with this.
Sure. I think this is my most played game on Steam Deck. This is even before all our international travels. This was me like just lying in bed and just being like, all right, I'm taking the day off. And I played so much that my wrist would hurt. My legs would go numb on the toilet.
Yeah, that's my wrist hurt, sure.
It's such a good game. Hades 1 was kind of funny because we were working on it's like inverse. I didn't want to play Hades 1 until 1.0. So I was like, whereas with Hades 2, it was like, I can't wait. And oh my, it's been so fun. I think this is like the first time I've really been invested in an early access game. Like, not like, it's weird to talk about like World of Warcraft. I'd read every patch note, but it's like this weird always updating. Every patch note of Hades 2, like, oh, they fixed this. Let me try again. Like, oh my God. And then yesterday they put out this giant new thing. So yeah, Hades 2, I love it. I like it. It's weird. Hades 1, I really liked. Hades 2, I feel like controls differently, like the weapons and everything. The biomes, I won't like spoil or anything, but like different stuff, which is awesome. So if you played so much of Hades 1, it's all new stuff. It's really, really cool. And like, again, every patch kind of changes how things react and work, but like it's still the core. It's so good, and I feel like there's so much more variety or kind of like directions or paths you can go. If you're not feeling something, you can try something different. I still haven't technically beaten it, but in the latest patch, they added like an upgrade you can do that might make the final boss easier. Nice. I can gush infinitely, so I'll save it for the thing. But yeah, it's 10,000% like one of my favorite games of the year. They did it again. It's awesome.
They did it again. Yeah, I loved it. I love all the interesting new meta progression stuff they have in there. There's so much to do outside of the combat, which is really cool. It's super, and all the new art, all the new characters, all the new voices, all that shit's really cool. So yeah, Hades 2 is great and will probably continue to get great until they put that thing out. Which I'm guessing is not this year now because they just put an update out 2 days ago. So presumably it's going to be sometime next year, I imagine. One that Jesse has down here, and I think I had it in my honorable mentions, but I haven't completed it yet. And Frank also has it in his need to play more, is Astro Bot. People seem to be losing their minds over Astro Bot in a way that makes me think they didn't play the other Astro Bots, is my feeling. Like, I think Astro Bot's really good, but also Astro's Playroom was really good, and whatever the other...
Rescue Mission, the one on VR, right?
The VR one was brilliant. So I think maybe the VR one is the one people haven't played.
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame them. It's a PSVR exclusive, which you have to play on. You can't play on PSVR 2. You have to play on PSVR 1.
You're right. It's only available on the first one. Yeah.
It's only getting harder to play.
And it's really good, and it's better than Astro's Playroom. Like, it's fantastic. It does like loads of really interesting mechanical things all the time. And I was playing Astro Bot and going, yeah, they made a great sequel to that great VR game that they. So in a way, I feel like some of the response to Astro Bot is from people who didn't know that these games were that good. Maybe I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think part of it also is people played Astro's Playroom and they were like, oh, I just want another one of these that's not saddled in tech demo land. And they did that, and it still has its problems. I think we talked for like 45 minutes on this pod at one point about how we don't like brand, or at least Jeremy and I did, about how that shit kind of gets in the way of the game. But it is still one of my favorite games of this year. I grew up playing Super Mario Galaxy. This is pulling a lot of stuff from that. Thematically, it has that same level of like joy. I think for me anyway, if I'm comparing something to Nintendo, I'm saying it's good. Like, they don't make games that I don't like personally. Most of the time anyway. Who am I kidding? But I just think Astro Bot, for all of its problems that I have with it on like a meta level, on a gameplay level, on a moment to moment, like they're firing on all cylinders, every single thing, every like new puzzle element, every new tool. It's crazy because there's things that they add to the game, gameplay mechanics, that some of them are for one level. And it's like the most shockingly good game. Yeah, a lot of them. But there's also a good handful that come back in multiple other levels later on.
Cool.
And when you play with those mechanics for the first time, I think the thought is, okay, they've exhausted every possible thing you could do with this in this one level. How well done. I hope they get their flowers for that. And then it comes back later and you're like, how did they find like 10 more things to do with this that feel as good as the first 10 things? It's just a masterstroke of like high quality, nonstop joy. I think part of the reason people are jumping for joy for the game is because it does the thing where you're like, holy crap, it's the character from a game I played when I was 14, which is fine. That's okay. That you can like things for that reason.
Which the other two did as well. Which
no,
is
absolutely.
why I'm finding it so confusing. Why, again, people are... I think it's just... Yeah, I guess I shouldn't find it confusing. It makes sense that a very small subset of people played the VR game.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, that's what they've always... The VR game was... was the VR game the one where you're literally building, you're doing the same thing you do in this one, where you're going into or was that Astro's Playroom where you go into like the GPU area?
Yeah, that was the
stuff?
PS5 launch one, which is Playroom. Yeah.
Okay,
it might have been the same thing in the VR one. I haven't played that one myself.
I can't remember. Yeah, but they do all that shit there too, where you're like, you collect the VMU or like, or the PlayStation PSP Go is like an unlock in that game. You know what I mean? It does all that stuff. Obviously, this one's a bit more on the characters, but like they were in the game too. Like you'd see them, like oh look, there's.
It's just this time around there's
Aloy.
300. Like if you're a Vib Ribbon fan, spoilers. There's Vib Ribbons.
Man, I am. Is there a Vib Ribbon in there?
yeah. At some point you may find one. See,
right, I take it back. Give it here.
But see, that's exactly what I'm saying. Where it's like you're like, oh, okay, hold on. It does have the thing that reminds me of the youth and joy that I used to have in my life, and like that makes it a little bit more exciting. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's perfectly fine. But I would not rate the game higher because it has fucking Jack and Daxter in it. I'm excited because it has really good levels in it. In fact, part of the game is playing through mechanics that are sort of like a throwback. I won't say what, but like the ones that are clearly a love letter to Japan studio games. Those are really fun and inventive.
Oh, dope. Yeah.
The ones that aren't are like, oh, okay, yeah, I forgot. This is actually all we're doing.
There's a cooler world
games.
in there.
I fucking wish.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Astro Bot. I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot. I have to complete it yet, so clearly there is some stuff I'm missing out on as well, because I didn't realize some of that stuff comes back. And then going through here, there's a couple of other ones. Anyone really wants to shout out in particular? There was a lot of need to play more as another, honorable mentions and stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Tekken 8 was incredible.
Yeah.
So Tekken 8 was fantastic. That came out like around March or so, and I was super deep into it until I would get infuriated losing in ranked matches. But I got to that ceiling where I was like, oh, I'm so good, and then every time I lost, I get so angry. I think compared to like the other recent like franchise fighting games, Mortal Kombat 1 I really liked. Wasn't that much of an evolution from 11. I still really liked it, but I did the season. I got Chivos, beat the story, loved it. I didn't pick up the expansion because I was like, I think I'm okay for now when it's on sale. So I really like Mortal Kombat 1, but Tekken 8 was like, it's been a while since Tekken 7. That was like, God, 6 years ago or so, and so many new characters, just everything evolves, new mechanics. The multiplayer is great, crossplay. Everyone dresses up their characters in the dumbest stuff, cosplay and everything. So there's like two different story modes. There's like an actual story mode, cinematic. And then there's like arcade quests, which is small, but it's still like, I love when fighting games have single player driven experiences. Cause like, I don't want to just play ranked stuff. I want to like grind stuff, have fun and have fun with it. So yeah, King was, just playing as King was so good. My favorite, the wrestler character, but
King's the one with the leopard head, right?
Yeah. The luchador who runs an orphanage in Mexico, and so he has to fight to get presents for all the children.
That's such a Yakuza ass storyline.
Every character has silly story stuff. It's all in here. They're still doing more DLC characters coming down the line. They just had Heihachi. Like, yeah, it's really great, and I think in terms of just like the joy I got was a bigger leap from Street Fighter 5 to Street Fighter 6, a bigger leap of joy from Mortal Kombat 11 to 1. So I think like out of all the recent fighting games, Tekken 8 was like, oh, let me get lost into Tekken again. And I still want to keep diving in and playing it. But yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite games of the year. And again, playing with the fight stick, like, oh, it was so good. So I love it.
Man, I really want to play that one because I know that so many people have been really positive about it. I saw a tournament at PAX East. You obviously loved it, which is like, I think when Frank's hyped about something, I'm like, it's got to be fun. There's got to be some joy in there because you drop shit like a brick if it's not a good time in the first 10 minutes, which I wish I had your power. So if Tekken 8's a blast, I got to get into that. I dropped Street Fighter 6 earlier this year because they did Bison, and Bison was great. Like I had a lot of fun with it, but I realized you got to put so much time in to have fun. So if the story mission stuff, because I didn't like that in 6, if the story mission stuff in Tekken 8 is fun, that might be the first fighting game story mode I actually fuck with. So you've got
Give it a whirl.
Yeah. It opens with like them fighting in the sky above like a Times Square. It starts at like an 11. It's so silly. So the story mode's good.
Fuck yeah.
There's a bunch of games we've not talked about, which should also
I wanted
maybe
to talk about that
be
too.
talked about. Let's not get into any detail on it, but maybe we will when we get into the podcast. But Alan Wake 2, Helldivers 2, Pal World, Shadows of the Air Tree came out this year as well. I know it's a DLC, but we could probably talk about that. Hogwarts Legacy as well. I don't think any of us really played
Wasn't that last year?
That was last year.
Was that
Alan
last
Wake 2
year?
was
Oh,
last
it
year
was.
too.
Okay.
I
DLCs
did
this year.
I downloaded Hogwarts because I was like, oh, this might be fun, but it's like you got to go to class. It sucks.
Okay, hold on. But when it's Japanese characters and there's funk music playing.
Yeah, that's true.
Good point.
Have you tried playing it in Japanese?
Okay, no. I think that's. So
Talking
then
about
it's
Harry
just
Potter,
Persona.
Des?
I made Sydney Sweeney, and then it's like you got to go to your potions class. This is boring. You got to go to Hogs. I don't know, but if I play it in Japanese, maybe. But I heard once eventually you get to explore caves and fight spiders. That sounds fun, but it's like. Again, it has that first few hours of like, okay, but yeah, if it was in Japanese with jazz and anime, maybe. But I'll try in Japanese.
How do you pataru?
What?
Exactly. Yeah, we
Harry
need to-
Potter des.
Oh no.
We also
Daisuke.
didn't talk about. Apparently, Satisfactory technically came out this year, left early
yeah,
that's
access
a blast.
last month. Thank goodness you're here as well. Destiny had the final shape. I don't know if any of us are still giving a shit about Destiny. Tactical Breach Wizards also came out. I feel like I need to play a bit more of that one. Really enjoying it so far. Silent Hill 2, of course. Arco wasn't talked about either, so I
gotta
played a bit
finish
more
it.
of that. A bunch of great games. This is not an exhaustive podcast. We just sort of threw together some games that we have enjoyed and bringing it up. But yes, we'll be doing a more exhaustive breakdown of some of these. I know some folks had other honorable mentions, like Jeremy had 9 Souls down here, 1000X Resist as well. And then a lot of people have, hey, there's other games coming out later this year, like Stalker 2, that Indiana Jones game, Slitterhead, which you guys were talking about last week as well. So yeah, there's plenty more games to come out. If you have any suggestions for games that we haven't talked about, played or not played, podcast at noclip.video. And Frank, I believe we have an email as well. Someone squeezed one in the 24 hours between emails.
Yeah, so we got this.
Podcast.
I think we got this message in our Discord from a cartooner. I think as we were recording last episode, so I missed it. But I might need Jeremy's help on this one. But this is a good question. How much of Silent Hill 2's DNA is in Alan Wake 2? And then how much of Alan Wake 2's DNA is influencing the Silent Hill 2 remake? So it's this interesting Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if
how much of Twin Peaks is in both of them.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that gets at exactly what I was going to say, which is I feel like what I like about Silent Hill as a franchise, those mainline games, is that when they do like campiness and cheesiness, it doesn't feel like intentional. Like it's the David Lynch thing where when he's directing these actors, he's like, you got to play this role like your mother just died, and then they play it and it's campy, and you're like, oh, that's campy. I feel like Alan Wake 2 is like, and then we'll have a dance number and it'll be campy, and I don't like that as much. I think I think Alan Wake 2 is trying too hard to be campy, and Silent Hill 2 is the David Lynch, like, effortless camp. I can't speak for the remake of Silent Hill 2 because I bounced off it like a fucking bouncy ball.
That's very well said. I will say, compared to Alan Wake, I got lost constantly in Alan Wake 2. You have to mess with the map, change the adjective, whatever. Silent Hill 2 is linear enough to where I can get through it. I'm not lost. I'm not getting frustrated, and I really, really adore that. And so yeah, and again, I would compare even like Silent Hill 2 very much to like the Resident Evil 2 remake, where it's like just that same level. Where it's like, yeah, Alan Wake 2, very like it's very unique and odd, but in a different way. Whereas Silent Hill 2 is like more creepy, whereas Alan Wake 2 is like, ooh, let's have fun with like the storytelling, like the way you navigate locations, and that is really cool. But Silent Hill 2 seems more like the linear survival horror action of like Resident Evil 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems also that Silent Hill 2 remake took, like mechanical learnings from Alan Wake 2. Because I think Alan Wake 2 plays very well. It's a polished game that feels smooth and responsive and stuff. And so I mean, in that regard, Silent Hill 2 remake is clearly trying to emulate games that play like that, like Alan Wake 2 and The Evil Within, or the two that we mentioned last week.
They would have been in development at the same time, though, is the only thing. So they wouldn't have naturally cribbed off each other because they're only like 6 months apart, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, all of these games are kind of drawing upon a similar well of influences, I think, that kind of start around, you could trace it back to, like, Gears of War or Resident Evil 4 original, and they evolve in different ways. But, yeah, I feel like it's not that they're directly taking from that, it's that they're all winding up in the same place because of a collective pool of influences that are shared.
Yeah, definitely more contemporary. I feel like I have to play both of them more. I'm enjoying Silent Hill too. I was like screaming while my wife was playing games beside me, and I was just going, Jesus fucking Christ, doing all this stuff. And then yesterday I saw a headline on Reddit, which was or a post on Reddit, which was some guy saying that the cops were called to his house because of Silent Hill 2 because he was kept screaming and stuff happened, and his neighbor called him up. So who knows if it's true, because half of Reddit is bullshit, but I thought that was quite funny. So watch out, folks, when you're playing Silent Hill 2. All right, that's the podcast this week. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a more contemporary podcast that wasn't recorded ahead of time. So all of the things that happened this week that we should have been talking about, or at least had in our minds, we didn't, but we will next week. Hopefully it's good stuff. When's that election coming? Is that soon? I got my thing through the mail. I get to vote for the first time this time, which is a shame because I probably won't. But we'll see. Now that's where the angry emails come in. I'm looking at that thing, trying to figure it out. Is that soon? Is that like this month?
November or something, right?
Yeah, November 4th. No, sorry, November.
4th.
Wait a minute. Fuck. No, it's November 5th, right? It's Tuesday. Isn't it always on Tuesday?
Oh, is it that soon? Holy shit.
Yeah. So the podcast we record next week will still be before the election, so we still have time to influence the vote.
Wait,
We're gonna rock the vote.
It's the 5th of November? Is it always the 5th of November?
Or is it always November 4th? Dude, see, I don't see, Jesse, you know the politics more than me. I
don't
know.
I'm just thinking
in honor
because
of Guy Fawkes.
I was just going to say, is that, like, what are the chances?
So no one would ever forget because it's remember.
Exactly.
It is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Yeah.
So
crazy.
we're not incepting anyone should blow up Parliament. But
I will say,
Catholic
if you're
guy telling you to blow up Parliament.
If you're voting for Trump, though, the election is later in the. It's later. It's
Thursday,
like in
December.
November 6th.
I think they sneak it in before Christmas.
They're giving you extra time. They're giving you extra time to write in your vote. Yeah.
I think they're doing it on Black Friday. I think they've decided to keep.
There's
them
a special.
together.
It's cheaper. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, folks. Have a fun week. Play some video games. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.